Hey, it's Mega, aka the Art Messiah, here to save you from your art sins. Welcome back to another art tutorial. Today we're going to be talking about how to draw proportions for teenagers and kids. We're going to go ahead and jump right into this lesson, and we're going to build off of what we were learning last week and the week before that, which was how to draw female and male proportions. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. So for this first character that we're going to make that's aged down, we're going to make a high schooler. So someone that's a teenager, let's say maybe between 15 and 18. And the only thing that we need to do is just change the height of the character. So before we were at 8 heads, let's make a character 6 heads, and that will be the typical height for a teenager. So all we do is count up 6 heads from the feet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And we're going to draw a line at 6 heads, okay? So that's going to be the top of the head. And let's go ahead and draw on the bottom of the head. Again, using our guides, so go ahead and do that on your piece of paper. And we want to draw an oval in between those 2 lines. And remember, you know, you don't have to be a perfect artist. You don't need to have a perfect oval. I suck. My hand's shaky, so I get it. It doesn't need to be perfect. But we need to go ahead and draw on that oval, and that's going to represent our head. Okay, so if you remember from last time, in order to find the bottom of the hips, it's the halfway point between the top of the head and the feet. Well, in this case, since it's 6 heads tall, the halfway point is going to be at 3 heads. So we're going to go ahead and drop in a guide right there as well. Okay. And that is going to represent the bottom of the hip. That is a very important point. Okay. So with that established, we can go in and figure out the ankle point. So the ankle, again, when you're kind of shrinking this down, it's going to be very similar to what we drew last time, which was half a head's up. Now we're just going to, just shrink it just a little bit. So instead of a half, just slightly shorter than a half last time. And that's where your ankles are going to be. Now, that's the last time we are going to use the heads for any kind of measurements. Now we're going to make every single other measurement based off the lines we have right here. These are our critical lines, okay? So the next line I want to find is the bottom of the rib cage. And the bottom of the rib cage falls halfway between the end of the hip and where the around where like the clavicle or where the head is. So what we're going to do is between this line and the bottom of the hip, we're going to draw halfway through. Remember, nothing has to be exactly precise, but that is going to be the bottom of the rib cage. And the 2 last guides that I'm going to put into place are 1, the knees. And remember, the knees are halfway between the end of this hip and the ankles. So we're going to draw a halfway line right there as well. And that's going to be where our knees go. And the final guide that we're going to use before we start creating this mannequin is the line that kind of tells us the width of this body. Okay, so we're ready for the final lines now. Those are all the guides we need in place. And let's go ahead, and I like to start with the torso. The torso is the more complicated part. The legs are super easy. So we're going to jump in here for the torso. We have the bottom of the rib cage right here. So I'm going to go ahead and darken that in. Okay. And we know that the width is about halfway here between this line and this line. But as you make your characters younger, you want to kind of bring in those shoulders are going to be narrower. So instead of halfway like before, we're just going to bring those in. And again, this is why I'm saying that it doesn't have to be, you know, super accurate, because, you know, it's different for every single person. Every single person you draw is going to have slightly different proportions. Okay, so last line we need is going to be the clavicle, and I just like to place it right below that headline, just about here. It's going to be fine. Okay, so this top portion is kind of represented with this trapezoid shape, and it kind of resembles a square. Okay, now a halfway point in this square is where the center of the chest is going to be, and that is where both on the male and female where the nipples are going to fall. So we go ahead and draw in that halfway point. And when we draw on the pelvis is going to be the height of this section. So this is the bottom of the pelvis, so we're going to darken in that line. And we're going to take this distance right here and replicate that down right here. Alright, so that's looking really good. And the waist, especially when you're drawing younger characters, make that smaller than the shoulder width. Now our shoulder width is going to be somewhere around here, so we just need to make sure that it is smaller than that, and I'm going to pretty much match it up with this box that we created at the top, and we're going to taper this out just ever so slightly. Okay, drawing younger characters, you make that hourglass shape less pronounced. So let's go ahead and connect the upper and bottom torso just like that. And we're going to go ahead and drop in this upside down triangle just like this. And I'll kind of explain that more in future videos. Okay. So again, I want to take you guys step by step through this, and the next figure we draw, I'm going to time lapse it, but I really want you guys to just get a good grasp of these proportions and how we're creating them. Okay, so once you have that shape, I like to draw a little center line down here. Okay, and the belly button is going to come halfway between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the pelvis, and that's something I got a little bit off last time in terms of placement, so just make sure you get that right. Okay, I'm gonna bring out the hips just a little bit. Okay, so next thing I want to draw is kind of the shoulders, and the shoulders I just represent as, again, another triangle, and that's going to that headline. And the neck, I just drop vertical lines down for the neck. Okay, for the shoulder, I just like to use half spheres, just like this. Okay, and just notice how these shoulders are really coming in. Now I want to make a quick disclaimer, because you're probably looking at this figure and the previous figure and noticing what a big shift from someone that's supposed to be a high schooler and adult female. Now that adult female is 8 heads, and that's typically seen more in superhero proportions. So if you were going to draw like Superwoman or a really comic book character, we'd use those types of proportions. For more manga styled, like teenagers, high schoolers, you'd want to fall within these 6 head proportions that I'm showing now. The 8 heads was kind of like an idealized version, and so I just want to go ahead and put that disclaimer out. So if you're kind of wondering why it's looking so much different. That is exactly why. Okay, so one thing that we need to do is that the elbows, remember, fall at the bottom of the rib cage. So let's go ahead and draw in circles to represent that. And the bottom of the pelvis is going to represent where the wrist is. So let's go ahead and just quickly sketch in these arms. Okay, and use whatever mannequin shapes you came up with in previous videos. So now that we got that sketched in, let's go ahead and just do a quick sketch of the hands. It doesn't have to look pretty. Again, we just are getting proportions for now. I will do a tutorial on hands at a later date, and we'll go into detail about how to construct them and about how to make them look as good as we possibly can. So right now we're just going to go ahead and sketch in those general proportions for the hand. Take that eraser tool, kind of match that up. Okay. So we're almost done with the torso. The only thing we're going to add in now is the chest. And remember, I start where the neck meets the shoulder, and I take that line down to where the arm meets the chest. Then I simply wrap it back around, kind of like a heart shape, just like that. Okay, so at this point the torso is done. Now let's move into the legs. Now remember, this halfway line that we drew between the bottom of the pelvis and the ankle is where our knees are going to be. So let's go ahead and drop in some circles for the knees to go ahead and represent that. So we got 1 and 2. And we're just going to drop some lines down to represent the thighs. Okay, I'm going to connect that with the circle. Same thing with this side. Drop some lines down. And the same thing till we get to the ankle. We're going to draw the ankles in, draw circles in for the ankles. Okay. And let's go ahead and draw on some curved lines to get to the ankles to show the curve of the leg a little bit. And again, being perfect, it does not matter at this stage. We are simply working on the proportion aspect of it. So something like that. And then the feet, I just use this kind of triangular shape, right? Okay. And this is simply a first pass at the drawing. So I'm going to time lapse it and just clean it up a little bit, and then we're going to move into the last figure that we draw for the day. So there we have it. Here is a typical teenager and the proportions, and this is something that you could see for like manga and anime. They'll use something similar to these proportions, not really the one you see on the left. That's more of, again, kind of like that comic style, American comic style for like superheroes, and that would be a character like Superwoman. So this is going to be more of a proportions that you see in typical anime and manga, what we just drew. Kind of a high schooler, middle schooler. And there's a few notes that I want to make before we move on to the next figure, is that as you make your characters younger, you want to bring in the shoulders a little bit. You want to drop the hips down just a little bit, and you're going to want to make the eyes slightly bigger, but everything else kind of, you know, the ratio of these proportions is going to be something similar. So let's go ahead and see and demonstrate that in this next one. So this next one, we're going to draw someone that's a preteen, let's say someone that's around 8 to 10, and instead of using 6 heads tall, we're going to use 4 heads tall. So let's go ahead and drop in that initial guideline. So we go to 4 heads, right? And we're going to drop in a guide for that. So that's 4 heads tall right there. And then to find that bottom of the hips, that's about halfway down. But remember when I said that as you get younger, that halfway point, those hips are actually going to drop just a little bit. So let's go ahead and draw the actual halfway point, which is going to be right around here, and we're going to drop that down just a little bit. Okay, and that's going to be our real halfway point. And remember, this one's 4 heads tall, so let's go ahead and draw the bottom of the head, and let's go ahead and draw on that hip line again. Remember, it's going to be slightly lower than what it was before. Okay, so again, we draw on an oval for the head. To find the bottom of the rib cage, remember we dropped that waistline down. To find the bottom of that rib cage, we're gonna go halfway between the end of the head and our halfway point. And so the bottom of the rib cage is going to be somewhere around here, and that's good. Another point that we want to find is the halfway point between the end of the pelvis. Oh, actually before that, let's draw on our ankles. And remember, our ankles are getting, you know, a little bit tinier and tinier. So here's our ankles, and between the ankles and the end, or the bottom of the pelvis, halfway between that, we're going to get our knees. So let's go ahead and drop in where our knees should be. So our knees are going to need to be right around there. The first shape, just like before, we're going to draw the bottom of this rib cage. That's going to fall just about right here. Okay, we're bringing in our shoulders, so we're just going to bring in this square shape quite a bit, like so. Okay, we're gonna draw a halfway point right here. It's gonna be around the center of the chest. We duplicate that down here for our pelvis, so something like this. Bottom of the pelvis is right here. And we connect those lines together. Halfway point between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the pelvis is where our belly button is going to be. Let's drop in our upside down triangle. Let's go ahead and draw in this neck area. Now this is getting, again, just more shrunk and shrunk every time. And then we go ahead and drop in our shoulders by making a little circle here, a little circle there. Look at how our shoulders are really coming in. The smaller this character gets. We're going to draw in the elbow points, which are around here and here. Make some lines to connect. We're going to draw in our wrist at the bottom of that pelvis, here and here. And we're going to connect those with more lines. Okay, then our knees are falling at this halfway point. So let's go ahead and drop in some circles for that. Draw in our lines connecting, and then we're going to draw in more circles for our ankles, and we're going to connect those dots, and then we're going to use a triangular shape for the feet. Okay, let's go ahead and draw in some hands. Draw on the other hand. Okay, and there you have it. There you have a character that is much younger, maybe even younger than 8. But I'm gonna go ahead and add in some final lines for this character, and we're gonna have some final words, and we'll go ahead and close off this video. Alright, so there you have it. So here is a little kid, and so an important notes that I want to bring up is that the head size is not changing, but your body proportions are shrinking, proportionate. So with using this method of kind of taking these halfway points and then shrinking all the proportions to match, you're going to be able to create characters that are both young and old, but also maintain correct proportions without having to pull up a model every single time. So hopefully this was clear and not too confusing. If you have any questions or would like any clarification after you try this yourself and maybe you get stuck, just let me know. Leave a comment in the comment section down below, and I will definitely get to that as soon as I can and whenever I can. So with that, I kind of want to go ahead and finish off the video by thanking my subscribers and for all of you guys liking these videos. It means a lot to me. And my challenge for you guys is to create these proportions. Try different ages and different proportions. And this is a great moment for you guys to try creating all these mannequins, and then you can go in and start making your character design sheets, right? You can start making all these standing poses with all these different characters and all these different proportions, and you can start creating your character design sheet. So that's something that I really love to do. I challenge you guys to do that. If you do, post it on your favorite social media and tag me in it, and that way I can leave some feedback and I can give you some praise and all that good stuff. So again, thanks for watching. Until next time, where we go into perspective and how we're going to learn how to draw the figures in perspective. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video. Peace.